Hello and welcome to the Photo Files. My name is Roger from Metcalf Photography. This channel is all about digital and film photography from the perspective of a working professional. I may not be the photo channel that you want, but I might be the photo channel that you need. This episode is all about protest photography on film and how you might approach it. Capturing today's news and events on film may ultimately end up being very important down the line. We're going to lose a lot of what was captured digitally over time. I think there's just no question about it. And sometimes we find ourselves in moments where we know history is happening. And I think we're finding ourselves in that right now. As AI photography enters the chat and it becomes more and more difficult to discern an original image from an altered one, a new set of reasons start to emerge for using film photography over digital photography. We can preserve truth to the best of our ability in a permanent way, and in a way that's much harder to alter than a digital image. So these images are all from a protest in Boston at the Boston Common. At a large protest like this, it's not always clear what you should be photographing. This was a protest and counter-protest setup, although the counter-protest didn't really occur. My personal approach when you are at a news event or a protest or something like this, I don't want to be part of the story. I don't want to affect what is happening on the ground. I think it's really important that, I view my role as someone that is there to capture the truth, to tell it as honestly as I can. And that generally requires you to be close, but you need to be close without interfering. If you become part of the story, you're just manipulating it too much. Any image that you create is going to be something that only you can make. The truth is going to come, the way you frame the image, your relationship to decisive moments, and when you hit the shutter, and everything related to how you build an image and how you construct a frame. That's who, in my view, that's where the photographer is present in every image. If you're acting as a true journalist, the idea should be to be impartial in your work. The goal for me anyway is always to tell the truth. Hopefully show a perspective that you wouldn't have seen had I not been there. And so there's a lot you can look for at a protest. There's obviously whatever's happening on the front lines, and that's where it's going to be likely dangerous at times, and where you run the risk of becoming part of the story. And so keeping a certain distance is critical in my view. But then there's a million stories at these events. There's each level back that you get from the action, from the nucleus of it. And so these images were all taken on the Mamiya 645 Pro and using the 80mm 1.9. There's just two rolls of film that comprise the images here. The roll of Fuji Acros 1, which is no longer available, and Kodak Tri-X 400. I personally love the 645 format because I get 15 shots in 120, and the viewfinders on these cameras they're really enormous, and that helps, from my perspective, seeing all the things that are going on better than you can with a small viewfinder. With regards to choosing a film, I'm deeply practical when it comes to covering this kind of work. I'm not trying funky things or things that are, I'm not trying to get too cute, essentially, with the film I choose. I'm going to be choosing very straightforward films that I know will work. Classic newspaper style films are going to be like Tri-X 400 or Ilford HP5. They're standards for a reason. These are going to get you through. They are always going to work. They're so durable. They're so reliable. Certainly, you can shoot slower speed films, but there's also a lot of value in having a 400 speed film or faster when you're capturing, news events. With Tri-X, you can push it to, 800, 1600, 3200 if you need to, and still get, very usable results good enough for printing, which is sort of how I think about it. Choose something that is, just really forgiving, especially if you're new to it. But in general, when you're capturing for news, or things where you really only have one shot, like Tri-X is always the answer. I think medium format is realistically the largest you're likely to be shooting at one of these things. I was kind of working my way through the crowd, looking for interesting signage and compositions. for these images, I wasn't shooting for any publication. I was just taking images for myself. Sometimes I'm just trying to grab an image for documentation purposes. And there was something about this one. I liked this guy's sign a lot, and the way he was presenting himself, and it was just never really knew if there was going to be a place for this image anywhere, but it was something that I wanted to capture. My personal approach when you are at a news event, I don't want to be part of the story. I don't want to affect what is happening on the ground. I think it's really important that I view my role as someone that is there to capture the truth, to tell it as honestly as I can, and that generally requires you to be close, but you need to be close without interfering. If you become part of the story, you're just manipulating it too much. Any image that you create is going to be something that only you can make. The truth is going to come, the way you frame the image, your relationship to decisive moments, and when you hit the shutter, and everything related to how you build an image and how you construct a frame. That's who, in my view, that's where the photographer is present in every image. It's often been said that photography is the art of being invisible. There can be a lot of power in isolating a single sign. An image like this is more about setting the scene and showing the opposition. This one was interesting. I think when you can find a pattern or a line, or where signage or people start to make up a natural kind of a shape. I think while one sign, while capturing a single person or a sign can say a lot, the reality of these sorts of events is that there are a lot of perspectives, and finding a way to put them together can tell a more full picture. It sounds obvious, but finding a way to put them together in a way that is where it's both visually interesting and contains a multitude of messages can make, something really interesting. This is one of my favorite images here. What I really like is that you can see the cityscape and the Prudential building over to the left. And then in this lower section, you've got the crowd, and it's nicely kind of blurred out and compressed, and then you have all of the signs that are sharp. This image really works for me, and this is an image to me that tells a story of the broader story, and not just a single idea, but I think you can get a real sense of what it was like to be there from this picture. This is right after the protest was over, and there was just something about it, I think, with the empty street, people walking side by side up right in the middle, the photographer standing on an electric box, helicopter circling above it. I think it really tells you what the reality is, when you are at a protest like this. If you are a film photographer out there and you are watching this moment in America, I would strongly encourage you to go out there and document this in a way that's, where you're not getting in the way, but you are capturing the whole truth and doing it in a way that's on film, so that as we look back on this, we can learn about ourselves. When you do photography for a long time, something that emerges is that the way you feel about an image today may be very different than how you feel about it tomorrow. As I have a 3-year-old daughter, and images that I took early on while she was still young would strike me one way. And now that I'm looking back on those 2 years later, it's like I'm seeing them completely differently. And I think that's, while we're in it and we're so close to it and where our nose is up to time, we just can't see it in the same way as we can when we have some time to reflect. Again, this is the miracle of photography, and I hope this video inspired you a little bit to go out there and take some pictures. If you have questions or comments, please leave them in the area below. This episode of the Photo Files is brought to you by me, Metcalf Photography. Please check me out at metcalfphotography.com if you need a wedding or an event or lifestyle news photography. I have about 30 years of experience. I've shot for the Boston Globe, GQ magazine, Time Out magazine. I love photography with all my heart, and I love bringing new people to photography, particularly film photography. And I love providing services to folks. So if you need photography services in the Boston area, please let me know. just shoot me a note. My email address is down below. And thanks so much for watching.